The gunshot echoed through the valley as Vivian Bailey crumpled to her knees in the dust, clutching her bleeding shoulder, tears streaming down her dirt-streaked face. The year was 1873, and the Montana Territory wilderness showed no mercy to a woman alone with a 6-month-old baby girl. She'd been on the run for 3 days, her supplies dwindling, and now the bounty hunters her father-in-law had sent were closing in. "They can't have her," Vivian whispered to the wind, pressing her daughter closer to her chest. "They can't take my Eliza." The sound of approaching hoofbeats sent a fresh wave of terror through her body. With no strength left to run and nowhere to hide in the open valley, she prepared to make her final stand. But when she turned to face her pursuers, she saw only a single rider, a tall man atop a chestnut stallion, his face shadowed by a wide-brimmed hat, a rifle balanced across his saddle. "Madam," he called, slowing his horse as he approached, "you're bleeding." Vivian backed away, her boots sliding in the loose dirt. "Stay back," she warned, though she had nothing to threaten him with. Her husband's revolver had run out of ammunition the previous day. The stranger dismounted in one fluid motion, keeping his movements slow and deliberate. "Name's Wade Daniels," he said, removing his hat to reveal sun-weathered features and eyes the color of a summer sky. "I'm not looking to harm you or your little one." Vivian swayed on her feet, the blood loss making her dizzy. "I don't trust strangers." "I understand that," Wade replied, keeping a respectful distance. "But that wound needs tending, and those hills aren't a place for a woman and child alone." He gestured toward the horizon. "I heard shooting. Who's after you?" The baby began to whimper, sensing her mother's distress. Vivian's composure cracked and the words tumbled out. "My father-in-law. He's a powerful man in Sacramento. My husband died 3 months ago, and he's decided I'm unfit to raise his grandchild." A sob escaped her throat. "He sent men to take her from me." Wade's expression hardened. "Men who'd shoot a mother. They said they were aiming for my leg." Vivian looked down at her daughter's tiny face. "They'll take my baby," she whispered, the fear in her voice palpable. Wade stepped forward, determination etching itself onto his features. "Then I'll be the one who raises her proud," he declared, his voice carrying across the empty wilderness. He quickly added, "Both of you, I mean. I've got a homestead about 5 miles from here. It's not much, but it's defensible, and you'd be safe there until we figure things out." Vivian's legs finally gave out. Wade moved quickly, catching her before she hit the ground, careful not to crush the infant between them. The baby wailed louder now, and Wade found himself looking into a pair of frightened eyes that reminded him of a cornered doe. "Why would you help us?" Vivian managed to ask. Wade's answer came without hesitation, "Because it's what any decent man would do." He glanced at the trail behind her. "Those men will be coming back. We need to move now." With gentle hands, he helped Vivian onto his horse, then passed the baby up to her before mounting behind them. "Hold tight, madam. I'll get you both somewhere safe." As they rode away, Vivian couldn't help but wonder if she'd made another terrible mistake trusting this stranger. But with her blood soaking through her dress and her daughter's life in the balance, she had no choice but to lean back against the solid warmth of Wade Daniels and pray he was the honest man he appeared to be. The ride to Wade's homestead was grueling for Vivian. Every hoofbeat sent jolts of pain through her wounded shoulder. The baby, exhausted from days of travel and hunger, had finally fallen into a fitful sleep against her mother's chest. Wade kept the horse at a steady pace, taking routes through dense pine forests and shallow creek beds to obscure their trail. "Not much further now," he assured her as the sun began its descent toward the western mountains. "My place is just beyond that ridge." Vivian nodded weakly, her consciousness fading in and out. "I never told you my name," she realized suddenly. I'm Vivian Bailey, and this is Eliza. Pretty names for pretty ladies, Wade replied, his voice a comforting rumble against her back. When they finally crested the hill, Vivian saw a small but sturdy cabin nestled in a clearing with a corral for horses, a modest barn, and a creek running nearby. Smoke curled from the chimney, and a large dog came bounding out to greet them. You have someone here? Vivian asked, sudden fear gripping her heart. Just my old friend Samuel. He helps me work the place, Wade explained. He's trustworthy. As they approached, an older black man emerged from the cabin, his expression changing from welcome to concern when he spotted Vivian and the baby. Wade. What trouble have you found now? Samuel called, hurrying to assist them. The kind that needed finding, Wade answered, dismounting before carefully helping Vivian down. She's been shot. Can you tend to her while I settle the horse and keep watch? Samuel nodded, his experienced eyes assessing Vivian's wound. Come inside, miss. I was a medic during the war. I'll fix you up. Inside the cabin, Vivian was struck by its unexpected homeliness. Though simple, it was clean and orderly, with handmade furniture, shelves of books, and dried herbs hanging from the rafters. Samuel directed her to a chair and gently took Eliza so he could examine Vivian's shoulder. Bullet went straight through, he announced after cutting away the bloodied fabric of her dress. You're lucky. Hold still now while I clean it. Vivian bit her lip against the sting of whiskey on her wound, her eyes never leaving her daughter, who now lay swaddled in a clean blanket on a nearby bed. How long have you known Mr. Daniels? She asked, trying to distract herself from the pain. Samuel's hands worked with practiced efficiency. Going on 8 years now. Fought beside him in the war, then came west together after. He's a good man, stubborn as a mule sometimes, but his heart's in the right place. Before Vivian could ask more questions, Wade entered, carrying her meager belongings from his saddlebags. He'd removed his coat and gun belt, and without them, he looked less intimidating, just a man with kind eyes and work-hardened hands. Samuel take good care of you? He asked, setting a kettle to boil on the stove. Vivian nodded. Thank you both. I don't know what would have happened if you hadn't come along. Wade's expression darkened. Those men were following your trail pretty clear. I led them on a false path, but they'll figure it out eventually. We should be ready. What can we do? Vivian asked, fear creeping back into her voice. Wade poured 3 cups of coffee and sat across from her. First, you need to tell us everything. Who's your father-in-law, and why is he so determined to take your child? Vivian's hands trembled as she accepted the cup. His name is Judge Edward Montgomery. He's one of the most influential men in California. She took a shaky breath. His son, my husband, Robert, died of pneumonia this past winter. The judge never approved of me. I was just a seamstress, not from the right social circles. And now he wants the child, Samuel concluded. Yes, he claims I'm unfit because I have no money, no property. He filed papers to take guardianship of Eliza. Tears welled in her eyes. When I refused to hand her over, he sent these men. Said they were just going to escort us back, but when I ran. She gestured to her shoulder. Wade leaned forward, his gaze intense. A man who sends guns after his own grandchild doesn't deserve her. You did right to run. But where can I go? He has connections everywhere. There's nowhere safe. Wade exchanged a glance with Samuel before answering. You can stay here. My land is registered under a different name, a precaution from my younger days. It would take them time to find this place, and by then, we can figure something more permanent. Why would you risk yourself for us? Vivian asked, truly bewildered by his generosity. Wade was quiet for a long moment, his eyes drifting to the sleeping baby. I've seen too many people hurt by men who think power gives them the right to take what isn't theirs. He met her gaze again. I meant what I said out there. If they want to take her, they'll have to go through me first. Vivian didn't know what to say. In her experience, men rarely offered help without expecting something in return. But there was an earnestness in Wade's face that made her want to believe him. I don't have much to offer in payment, she finally said. Wade shook his head. Not asking for payment, just doing what's right. He stood and stretched. You two can take my room. Samuel and I will bunk out here. After he'd gone outside to check the perimeter, Samuel finished bandaging Vivian's shoulder. Wade doesn't talk much about his past, he said quietly, but he knows something about losing family to powerful men. Trust him. He'll keep his word. That night, lying in Wade's bed with Eliza beside her, Vivian allowed herself to feel the first glimmer of hope she'd known in months. Outside, she could hear the low murmur of Wade and Samuel talking, the occasional bark of the dog, and the familiar symphony of night creatures. Despite the pain in her shoulder and the uncertainty of her future, she fell into the deepest sleep she'd had since fleeing Sacramento. Dawn broke with the sound of chopping wood. Vivian fed Eliza, changed her into the only clean clothes they had left, and ventured outside to find Wade splitting logs while Samuel tended a small garden. Morning, Wade called, setting down his axe. How's the shoulder? Better, thank you. Vivian shifted Eliza to her good arm. I was hoping I might help with something. I'm not used to sitting idle. Wade wiped sweat from his brow. Samuel's making breakfast. Maybe you could give him a hand. And I've been thinking if you're planning to stay a while, we should send for some supplies from town. Proper clothes for you and the little one for starters. I couldn't ask you to spend money on us, Vivian protested. Not asking, Wade replied with a small smile. Telling. Besides, I've been meaning to fix up the place. Never had much reason to before. Over the next few days, Vivian settled into a routine at the homestead. Her shoulder began to heal, and with proper food and rest, color returned to her cheeks. Wade taught her to shoot his spare revolver, insisting she needed to be able to defend herself and Eliza if necessary. Though her aim was terrible at first, she proved a quick study. You're a natural, he commented after she hit the target 3 times in a row. Just needed proper instruction. Vivian felt a surge of pride. My husband never thought women should handle firearms, said it wasn't ladylike. Wade scoffed. Nothing unladylike about staying alive. As days turned into weeks, Vivian found herself watching Wade when he didn't notice. The gentle way he handled Eliza, letting her tiny fingers grasp his calloused thumb. The quiet competence with which he ran the homestead. The respect he showed to Samuel, treating him as an equal partner rather than hired help. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, Eliza sleeping peacefully in a cradle Wade had crafted, Vivian finally asked the question that had been on her mind. Why did you really help us that day, Wade? The truth. Wade was silent for so long she thought he might not answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was soft with memory. I had a sister once, younger than me by 10 years. Our parents died when she was just a child, and I did my best to raise her. He stared out at the darkening mountains. When the war came, I had to leave her with relatives. By the time I came back, she'd been married off to a man 3 times her age because he offered them money. She died in childbirth a year later along with the baby. Vivian's heart ached for him. I'm so sorry. I couldn't save her, Wade continued, but when I saw you out there holding your baby and ready to die to protect her. He turned to meet her eyes. I couldn't ride away, not again. Without thinking, Vivian reached out and placed her hand over his. You gave us a chance, Wade. That's more than most would do. The moment stretched between them, fragile and new. Then Samuel called from inside that supper was ready, breaking the spell. But something had shifted, a tentative bridge forming across the chasm of their separate pasts. The following morning, Wade announced he needed to ride into the nearest town for supplies. "We're running low on just about everything," he explained. "And I need to check if there's any word about men looking for a woman and child." Vivian felt anxiety ripple through her. "Is it safe for you to go?" "Safer than you," Wade replied. "I've got friends in town who keep their ears open. I'll be careful." After he'd gone, Vivian helped Samuel with the washing, her mind troubled. "Do you think they're still looking for us?" Samuel considered the question carefully. "A man like your father-in-law doesn't give up easy, but he also can't spend forever chasing one woman and child. Depends on how much he wants that baby." "He never even held her," Vivian said bitterly. "Robert brought her to meet him once and he barely looked at her, said he'd be more interested when she was old enough for finishing school." Samuel shook his head. "Then it's not about love. It's about control. That's what makes him dangerous," Vivian replied softly. Wade returned late that evening, his expression grim as he stabled his horse. Vivian met him at the door, immediately sensing something was wrong. "What happened?" she asked as he removed his coat. "They were in town," Wade said, keeping his voice low so as not to wake Eliza. "3 men asking questions about a woman with a baby, offering good money for information." Vivian's blood ran cold. "Did anyone tell them about you?" "No, but they're getting closer." Wade ran a hand through his hair. "We need to make some decisions, Vivian. They won't stop looking until they find you or get convinced you're somewhere they can't reach." "What can we do?" The desperation in her voice was palpable. Wade's next words surprised her. "We could get married." "What?" Vivian stared at him in shock. "Hear me out," Wade continued, sitting down at the table. "If you're my wife legally, it makes it harder for him to claim Eliza. We could register the marriage in another county, change your names officially. It would give you legal protection." Vivian's mind raced. A marriage of convenience. "For now," Wade agreed. "No obligations beyond what you're comfortable with. I'd give you my name, my protection, and my word that I'd never stand between you and Eliza." It was a practical solution, Vivian had to admit. And yet, something in her rebelled against the idea of another marriage without love, even if Wade was nothing like her late husband. "I need time to think," she finally said. Wade nodded. "Of course. It's just an option, not an order." That night, Vivian couldn't sleep. She watched Eliza's peaceful breathing and tried to imagine what her future might hold. Marriage to Wade would offer security, a home for her daughter. He was a good man, far better than Robert had ever been. But could she bind herself to another man so soon? And what if Wade came to resent the burden they placed on him? At dawn, she found him already awake, sitting on the porch steps with a cup of coffee. Without a word, she sat beside him and watched the sun paint the mountains gold. "I'll marry you," she said finally. "For Eliza's sake." Wade turned to look at her, his eyes serious. "I won't make you regret it. I know." And somehow she did. They were married 3 days later by a circuit judge who was passing through a small town 30 miles away. Samuel stood as witness, and Eliza gurgled happily in a new dress Wade had purchased for the occasion. It was a brief ceremony, nothing like the elaborate wedding Vivian had had with Robert. Yet as Wade gently slid a simple gold band onto her finger, his mother's, he told her Vivian felt an unexpected flutter in her heart. "Mrs. Daniels," the judge pronounced, and just like that, Vivian Bailey ceased to exist on paper. In her place stood Vivian Daniels, legal wife of Wade Daniels and mother to Eliza Daniels. The journey back to the homestead was quiet, each lost in their own thoughts. Wade had arranged for a proper crib to be delivered, along with other necessities for Eliza and new clothes for Vivian. When they arrived, they found Samuel had prepared a special dinner to celebrate. "To new beginnings," he toasted, raising his glass. "New beginnings," Wade and Vivian echoed, their eyes meeting briefly over their glasses. That night, Wade insisted on sleeping in the barn, giving Vivian and Eliza privacy in the main house. Lying alone in what was now legally her bed, Vivian touched the wedding band on her finger and wondered what she had gotten herself into. Marriage to Robert had taught her that legal bonds didn't guarantee happiness or safety. Yet Wade had already shown her more consideration in a few weeks than Robert had in years of marriage. "It's just paper," she whispered to herself. "Just a strategy." But as she drifted off to sleep, she couldn't help but wonder if perhaps, someday, it might become something more. The following weeks brought changes to the homestead. Wade expanded the garden, built a proper fence, and began construction on an addition to the cabin. Vivian took over the cooking and mending, grateful to contribute. She discovered Wade's hidden collection of books and spent evenings reading aloud while he whittled toys for Eliza. Samuel watched the developing domesticity with knowing eyes, but kept his observations to himself. He simply continued his daily routine, occasionally taking Eliza so Vivian could rest or Wade could teach his new wife more about defending the homestead. It was during one of these lessons that the fragile peace was shattered. Wade was showing Vivian how to reload the revolver faster when the dog began barking furiously. Seconds later, Samuel appeared from behind the house, his expression urgent. "Riders coming. 4 of them." Wade immediately handed Vivian the loaded gun. "Take Eliza and go to the root cellar. There's a hidden compartment at the back. Stay there until I come for you." "What about you?" Fear clutched at Vivian's throat. "I'll handle it." His voice was calm but firm. "Go now." Vivian scooped up Eliza from her blanket on the porch and ran to the root cellar, her heart pounding. The hidden compartment was small but deep enough to conceal them both. She crawled inside, pressing Eliza to her chest, and pulled the false wall closed just as she heard horses entering the yard. From her hiding place, she could hear muffled voices. Wade's deep tone, another man's sharper one. The conversation seemed to grow heated, then suddenly quieter. Silence followed, broken only by Eliza's soft breathing against her neck. Minutes stretched into an agonizing hour. Finally, footsteps approached the root cellar. Vivian raised the revolver with trembling hands. "Vivian, it's me." Wade's voice. "It's safe to come out now." She pushed open the false wall and emerged to find Wade standing alone, his expression unreadable. "Are they gone?" she asked, adjusting Eliza in her arms. "For now." Wade helped her out of the hiding place. "They're Judge Montgomery's men, all right. Said they've been tracking you for weeks." Fear gripped her heart. "Did they know I was here?" They suspected. "I told them I hadn't seen anyone matching your description." He guided her back toward the cabin. "I also told them I'm a recently married man whose wife is visiting her sister, and I'd appreciate them not frightening her when she returns." Inside, Samuel was brewing fresh coffee, his manner deliberately casual despite the tension in the room. "They didn't believe you," Vivian guessed, sinking into a chair. "Doesn't matter if they did. I made it clear that searching my property without a warrant would be a mistake they wouldn't walk away from." Wade's tone was matter of fact. "But they'll be back, probably with reinforcements. We need to consider our options." "We could run," Vivian suggested. "Go farther north, maybe to Canada." Wade shook his head. "Running means always looking over your shoulder. No real life for you or Eliza." "Then what?" Wade and Samuel exchanged glances. "I've been thinking," Wade said slowly. "The judge's power comes from his position, his connections, but even he has to follow certain laws." "What are you suggesting?" Vivian asked, a flicker of hope kindling within her. "We need to fight him on legal ground. Establish your right to raise Eliza so firmly that even his influence can't overturn it." Wade leaned forward, his expression intense. "I know a lawyer in Helena who owes me a favor. He's good used to practice in San Francisco before moving to the territory." Vivian's hope faltered. "Legal battles cost money, and going against someone like the judge." "We have something he doesn't," Wade insisted. "You're Eliza's mother. I'm now her legal stepfather. We have a stable home, means to support her, and can prove the judge sent armed men to take her by force." No court would side with him. It sounded so simple when Wade said it, but Vivian knew the reality would be far more complicated. "He'll claim I kidnapped her, that I fled with his grandchild against court orders. Then we need witnesses who can testify to his character and yours. People from Sacramento who knew your situation." Wade's determination was unwavering. "There must be someone who would speak for you." Vivian thought for a long moment. "My friend Clara, she worked with me at the dressmaker's shop. She knew how Robert treated me, how his father was. And there was Robert's doctor, Dr. Wilson. He was kind to me after Eliza was born. Good, I'll send telegrams tomorrow." Wade reached across the table and took her hand. "Vivian, I promise to protect you both, and I intend to keep that promise, but I need you to trust me. Can you do that?" Looking into his earnest blue eyes, Vivian found herself nodding. "Yes, I trust you." That night, as they prepared for bed, Wade still insisting on taking the sofa despite Vivian's protests that he should have his bed back, she found herself lingering in the doorway. "Wade." He looked up from where he was arranging his blankets. "Yes, thank you. For everything." She hesitated, then added softly, "You're a better husband in name than Robert ever was in truth." A shadow of emotion crossed Wade's face. "You deserve better than either of us gave you." "Don't say that," Vivian insisted, surprising herself with the vehemence in her voice. "You've been nothing but good to us." Wade's expression softened. "Get some rest, Vivian. Tomorrow will be a long day." True to his word, Wade rode to the nearest town with a telegraph office the following morning. When he returned that evening, he brought news that the lawyer, James Hollister, would meet them in Helena in 1 week's time. "He's already looking into the legal precedents," Wade explained over dinner. "And he's reaching out to contacts in Sacramento to corroborate your story." "What if the judge's men return while you're away?" Samuel asked, giving voice to Vivian's own fears. "I've arranged for some friends to keep watch," Wade replied. "Former soldiers who owe me. They'll stay out of sight, but they'll be close enough if trouble comes." The week passed in a flurry of preparations. Vivian wrote detailed accounts of her marriage to Robert, the judge's treatment of her, and the circumstances that led to her flight from Sacramento. Wade expanded the hidden compartment in the root cellar, stocking it with supplies in case Vivian and Eliza needed to hide for an extended period. On the morning they were to depart for Helena, Wade surprised Vivian with a gift, a locket containing a tiny portrait of Eliza that he'd commissioned from an artist in town. "So she's always close to your heart," he said simply, helping her fasten it around her neck. The gesture brought tears to Vivian's eyes. "Wade, we should get going," he said quickly, suddenly awkward. "It's a long ride." Helena was larger and more developed than Vivian had expected, with proper streets, businesses, and government buildings that spoke of the territory's growing importance. James Hollister's office was on the second floor of a respectable building near the courthouse. The lawyer himself was younger than Vivian had imagined, perhaps in his early 30s, with intelligent eyes and a direct manner that immediately put her at ease. "Mrs. Daniels," he greeted her, shaking her hand firmly. "And Mr. Daniels, I've been looking forward to meeting you both." As they settled into chairs across from his desk, Hollister opened a folder containing the documents Wade had sent ahead. "I've reviewed your case, and I won't sugarcoat it. Judge Montgomery is a formidable opponent with significant influence, even here in Montana territory." He looked up, his expression grave. "However, he's not above the law, and what he's attempting borders on kidnapping. Can you help us?" Vivian asked, clutching Eliza closer. "I believe so. I've already filed petitions establishing your legal custody as Eliza's mother and Mr. Daniels as her stepfather. More importantly, I've gathered testimony from several sources in Sacramento that paint a concerning picture of the judge's intentions." Wade leaned forward. "What kind of testimony?" "For one, Dr. Wilson provided a sworn statement that Judge Montgomery never once visited his son during his illness, nor showed any interest in his granddaughter until after Robert's death. He also confirmed that you, Mrs. Daniels, were a devoted mother who received no financial support from the judge despite your circumstances." Hope blossomed in Vivian's chest. "And Clara, my friend from the shop," she provided perhaps the most damning evidence. Hollister pulled out a document. According to her statement, Judge Montgomery was overheard saying he intended to place Eliza in a boarding school as soon as she was old enough, while using her inheritance from her father, which should have gone to you, to fund his political aspirations. Robert left money for Eliza?" Vivian asked in surprise. "I was told there was nothing. According to bank records I've obtained, Robert Montgomery had a substantial life insurance policy naming his child as beneficiary. The judge was appointed temporary trustee, but only until you could be located." Hollister's eyes narrowed. "He seems to have neglected to mention that when filing for custody." Wade's hand found Vivian's, squeezing gently in support. "What do we do now? We've filed for a permanent injunction against the judge's custody claim. The hearing is set for 3 days from now." Hollister closed the folder. "In the meantime, I suggest you both stay out of sight. The judge's men have been asking questions around town." As they left the lawyer's office, Vivian felt a mixture of hope and dread. 3 days, she murmured. "After all these months, it comes down to 3 days." Wade guided her toward the hotel where he'd reserved rooms. "Hollister knows what he's doing, and we have the truth on our side." "Sometimes the truth isn't enough," Vivian replied, thinking of all the injustices she'd witnessed in her life. Wade stopped walking, turning to face her fully. "Then we make it enough, together." The intensity in his eyes made her breath catch. For a moment, she thought he might say more, but instead, he simply offered his arm to escort her the rest of the way. That night, after settling Eliza in the cradle the hotel had provided, Vivian stood by the window of her room, watching the lamplights of Helena flicker in the gathering darkness. A soft knock at the adjoining door startled her. "Vivian, are you still awake?" Wade's voice was low. She opened the door to find him still fully dressed, his expression troubled. "Is something wrong?" she asked. "Maybe." He entered the room, careful to leave the door partially open for propriety's sake. "I had a visitor at the saloon downstairs. Man I've never seen before, offering money for information about a woman and child new to town." Fear clutched at Vivian's heart. "The judge's men, most likely. I threw him off, but it means they know we're here." Wade ran a hand through his hair. "I don't like it, Vivian. The hearing's still 3 days away." "What should we do?" Wade paced the small room. "We could leave town, find somewhere to hide until the hearing, and risk not being there when the judge makes his case." Vivian shook her head. "No, we have to stay and fight." "Then we need to be extra careful." Wade's gaze fell on Eliza sleeping peacefully. "I won't let them take her, Vivian, I swear it." The conviction in his voice stirred something deep within her. Without thinking, she reached up and touched his cheek. "I know." Wade went still at her touch, his eyes darkening with an emotion Vivian wasn't ready to name. For a breathless moment they stood there, the air between them charged with unspoken feelings. Then Eliza stirred in her sleep, breaking the spell. Wade stepped back, clearing his throat. "I should let you rest. Lock the door behind me." After he left, Vivian pressed her fingers to her lips, wondering at the fluttering in her chest. This wasn't supposed to happen. Their marriage was an arrangement, a protection. Yet somewhere along the way, Wade Daniels had become more to her than a shield against the judge. Much more. The next 2 days passed in tense anticipation. Hollister met with them regularly, preparing Vivian for the questions she might face during the hearing. Wade kept vigilant watch, only leaving their rooms when Samuel arrived to stand guard in his place. On the evening before the hearing, Hollister brought unexpected news. "Judge Montgomery has arrived in Helena," he announced as they gathered in Vivian's room. "He's brought quite an entourage: his lawyer, 2 private detectives, and several witnesses prepared to testify to your unsuitability as a mother." Vivian's hands trembled as she folded Eliza's blanket. "He came himself." "It shows how seriously he's taking this," Hollister replied. "But it also gives us an opportunity. The judge presiding over our case, Judge Harmon, is known for his fairness. Seeing Montgomery's heavy-handed approach may work in our favor." Wade, who had been standing by the window watching the street below, turned to face them. "And what about the men who shot at Vivian? Will they face consequences?" "If we can identify them, absolutely. Attempted murder doesn't disappear because the perpetrator was following orders." Hollister began gathering his papers. "Get some rest, both of you. Tomorrow will be challenging." After the lawyer left, a heavy silence fell over the room. Eliza was already asleep, her tiny chest rising and falling peacefully, unaware of the battle being waged over her future. "Are you scared?" Wade asked softly, coming to stand beside Vivian. "Terrified," she admitted, "but also determined. I won't let him win, not after everything we've been through." Wade's hand found hers, their fingers intertwining naturally. "Whatever happens tomorrow, I want you to know something." He turned to face her fully. "These past months with you and Eliza, they've meant more to me than I can say." Vivian felt tears prick her eyes. "Wade, let me finish," he said gently. "I know our marriage was just a legal protection, but somewhere along the way it became real to me." His thumb traced circles on the back of her hand. "I love Eliza as if she were my own daughter, and I—" He took a deep breath. "I've fallen in love with you, Vivian." The confession hung in the air between them, honest and vulnerable. Vivian stared up at him, her heart pounding so loudly she was sure he could hear it. "You don't have to say anything," Wade continued quickly. "I just wanted you to know before tomorrow changes everything." "What if I want to say something?" Vivian whispered, finding her courage. "What if I want to tell you that I've fallen in love with you too?" The hope that bloomed on Wade's face was beautiful to behold. "Have you?" In answer, Vivian rose on her tiptoes and pressed her lips to his. The kiss was gentle at first, a question being asked and answered. Then Wade's arms came around her, pulling her closer, and the kiss deepened into something powerful and true. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, Wade rested his forehead against hers. "Well now," he murmured, "that's certainly worth fighting for." Vivian laughed softly, the sound bright with joy despite the challenges ahead. "Yes, it certainly is." The courthouse was crowded the next morning. Word had spread that a California judge was challenging a local couple for custody of their child. And the citizens of Helena were not about to miss such drama. Vivian, dressed in her best gown with Eliza in her arms, kept her head high as she walked down the aisle to the front of the courtroom, Wade's steady presence at her side. Judge Harmon, a stern-faced man with silver hair, called the court to order precisely at 9 o'clock. "We are here to determine the guardianship of one Eliza Montgomery Daniels," he announced. "I understand there are competing claims." From the other side of the courtroom, Judge Edward Montgomery rose. Seeing him in person for the first time in over a year, Vivian was struck by how cold his eyes were, how they passed over her without recognition, before fixing on Eliza with calculating interest. The proceedings began with Montgomery's lawyer presenting their case. According to them, Vivian was an opportunist who had married Robert for his money, neglected him during his illness, then fled with his child against court orders. They painted Wade as a fortune hunter who had married Vivian to gain access to Eliza's inheritance. Throughout it all, Wade sat beside Vivian, his face impassive but his hand occasionally squeezing hers under the table. When it was Hollister's turn to present their side, he did so methodically, introducing the testimony from Dr. Wilson and Clara, presenting the bank records showing the judge's mishandling of the inheritance, and finally calling Vivian herself to testify. As she took the stand, holding Eliza close, Vivian felt a strange calm settle over her. The truth was her weapon, and she wielded it with quiet dignity, describing Robert's neglect, the judge's indifference, and the terror of fleeing with a newborn when men with guns came for her child. "And this man," Hollister asked, indicating Wade, "what role has he played in your daughter's life?" Vivian's eyes met Wade's across the courtroom. "He saved us when we had nowhere to go. He married me to give Eliza his name and protection. He's been more of a father to her in a few months than her grandfather has ever been." Her voice strengthened. "He promised to raise her proud, and every day he keeps that promise." When Montgomery took the stand, his testimony was polished but cold, focusing on his social standing and financial resources rather than any emotional connection to Eliza. Under Hollister's cross-examination, he was forced to admit he had never held his granddaughter, could not recall her birthday, and had indeed discussed sending her to boarding school as soon as possible. "And the men you sent after Mrs. Daniels," Hollister pressed, "did you instruct them to use whatever means necessary to retrieve the child?" Montgomery's face hardened. "I instructed them to bring my granddaughter home where she belongs, even if that meant shooting her mother." A murmur ran through the courtroom. Montgomery's lawyer objected vigorously, but the damage was done. The final witness was Wade. As he took the stand, Vivian saw the respect he commanded simply by his bearing, his straightforward answers, and his obvious devotion to both her and Eliza. "Mr. Daniels," Judge Harmon asked, "you married Mrs. Montgomery knowing the legal complications surrounding her daughter." "Why?" Wade didn't hesitate. "Because it was the right thing to do, because a child belongs with her mother, and because I couldn't stand by and watch a powerful man destroy a family for his own purposes." He looked directly at Montgomery. "I promised to raise Eliza proud, Your Honor, and I intend to keep that promise whether the court rules in our favor or not." After the testimonies concluded, Judge Harmon called for a brief recess to consider his ruling. Vivian, Wade, and Hollister waited in a small anteroom, the tension almost unbearable. "You both did well," Hollister assured them. "Particularly you, Mrs. Daniels. Your sincerity was compelling." Wade paced the room, unable to remain still. "What if it's not enough? What if he rules for Montgomery?" "Then we appeal," Hollister replied firmly. "And in the meantime, we file for an emergency stay." When they were called back into the courtroom, Vivian felt as though she might faint. Only Wade's arm supporting her kept her upright as they returned to their seats. Judge Harmon's expression gave nothing away as he prepared to deliver his verdict. "In matters of guardianship," he began, "this court's primary consideration must be the welfare of the child in question." I have heard testimony regarding the character and intentions of both parties claiming guardianship of Eliza Montgomery Daniels. He paused, looking directly at Vivian. The bond between mother and child is sacred in the eyes of the law and should not be severed without the most compelling reasons. Hope flared in Vivian's heart. Furthermore, Judge Harmon continued, the evidence suggests that Judge Montgomery's interest in his granddaughter is not primarily concerned with her emotional well-being, but rather with control of her inheritance and his own social standing. His gaze hardened as it turned to Montgomery. The employment of armed men to forcibly separate a child from her mother is particularly disturbing to this court. Montgomery's face darkened with anger, but he remained silent. Therefore, it is the ruling of this court that full legal custody of Eliza Montgomery Daniels shall remain with her mother, Vivian Daniels, and her stepfather, Wade Daniels. Judge Harmon brought down his gavel with finality. Additionally, I am ordering that control of the child's inheritance be removed from Judge Montgomery and placed in a trust administered by Montana Territorial Bank until she reaches the age of 21. The courtroom erupted in exclamations and whispers. Vivian turned to Wade, tears of joy streaming down her face. He gathered her and Eliza into his arms, his own eyes suspiciously bright. "It's over," he whispered against her hair. "We won." From across the room, Judge Montgomery rose from his seat, his face contorted with fury. For a moment, Vivian feared he might come toward them, but instead he turned on his heel and strode from the courtroom, his lawyer hurrying after him. Hollister approached, beaming. "Congratulations, both of you. Judge Harmon's ruling was more comprehensive than I'd hoped." Montgomery would have a difficult time appealing successfully. "Will he try?" Vivian asked, unable to fully believe their ordeal was over. "He might, but his reputation has taken a serious blow today." Hollister gathered his papers. "I'll file the final paperwork tomorrow. In the meantime, go celebrate. You've earned it." Outside the courthouse, the bright Montana sunshine seemed to reflect Vivian's newfound joy. Wade lifted Eliza high into the air, making her giggle delightedly before settling her back into Vivian's arms. "What happens now?" Vivian asked, suddenly aware that the legal reason for their marriage no longer existed. Wade's expression grew serious. "That depends on you." He took her hand, his thumb brushing across the wedding band he'd given her. "Last night we said some things. I meant every word, Vivian. I love you. I love Eliza. I want to be a real family, not just on paper." Vivian's heart swelled with emotion. "I meant it too. I love you, Wade Daniels. You've shown me what a true partnership can be." She smiled up at him. "I think we already are a real family." Wade's answering smile was radiant. He leaned down and kissed her, right there on the courthouse steps, with Eliza gurgling happily between them. "Let's go home," he murmured against her lips. "All three of us." The journey back to the homestead was filled with a lightness that had been missing before. They traveled at a leisurely pace, stopping to admire views or let Eliza stretch on a blanket in sunny meadows. Each night at their camp, Wade and Vivian would sit beside the fire, planning their future, sharing stories, and falling more deeply in love. Samuel was waiting for them when they finally crested the hill overlooking the homestead. He waved enthusiastically, then froze, clearly reading their joyful expressions. "You won," he called as they rode into the yard. "We won," Wade confirmed, dismounting to embrace his old friend. "Eliza is officially ours, and the judge has been put firmly in his place." That night, they celebrated with a feast Samuel had prepared, the atmosphere festive despite their modest surroundings. As darkness fell, Samuel tactfully retired to the barn, leaving the new family alone in the cabin. Vivian put Eliza to bed in her crib, then turned to find Wade watching her from the doorway, his expression tender. "What?" she asked, suddenly shy under his gaze. "Just thinking how lucky I am," he replied, crossing to take her hands in his. "A few months ago, I was a lonely man with nothing but memories and regrets. Now I have everything I never knew I wanted." Vivian leaned into his embrace, resting her head against his chest. "We both got a second chance, and I don't intend to waste it." Wade tilted her face up to his. "I love you, Vivian Daniels, with all my heart." "And I love you," she whispered before his lips claimed hers in a kiss that sealed their new beginning. 5 years later, the Daniels homestead had transformed into a prosperous ranch. The original cabin had been expanded into a proper house with multiple bedrooms, a spacious kitchen, and even a small library filled with books for their growing family. Eliza, now nearly 6, was a spirited child with her mother's golden hair and a confidence born of being deeply loved. She rode her own pony, helped with chores, and delighted in being a big sister to 3-year-old William and 1-year-old Thomas. On a warm summer evening, as the sun painted the western sky in shades of pink and gold, Vivian stood on the porch watching Wade teach Eliza how to throw a lasso. Their daughter's triumphant cheer when she successfully caught the fence post made both parents laugh with pride. Samuel emerged from the barn where he'd been telling young William stories about his and Wade's adventures during the war, heavily edited for a child's ears, of course. He carried Thomas on his shoulders, the baby gleefully tugging at his white hair. "Mail came," Samuel announced, handing Vivian a small package. "From Helena." Vivian opened it to find a letter from James Hollister along with a newspaper clipping. The headline read, "Judge Montgomery resigns amid scandal." According to the article, the judge had finally been held accountable for various improprieties, including the mishandling of estate funds. "Well, well," Vivian murmured, showing the clipping to Wade as he joined her on the porch. "Seems justice finally caught up with him." Wade put his arm around her waist, pulling her close. "Does it bother you, knowing he's finally getting what he deserved?" Vivian considered the question, watching as Eliza demonstrated her new skill to an admiring William. "No," she decided. "That part of our life is over. We've built something too good to let old shadows darken it." Wade pressed a kiss to her temple. "That we have." As twilight deepened, they gathered their children and headed inside for dinner. The table was crowded now, filled with food and laughter and the happy chaos of family life. Samuel said grace, his voice strong despite his advancing years, giving thanks for their blessings. Later, after the children were asleep, Wade and Vivian sat on the porch swing, sharing a moment of quiet together as they did most evenings. "I've been thinking," Wade said, his fingers idly playing with a strand of Vivian's hair, "about what I said that day we first met, about raising Eliza proud." "You've more than kept that promise," Vivian assured him, leaning into his embrace. "I want to do the same for all our children, make sure they grow up knowing their worth, their strength." His voice grew thoughtful. "I never thought I'd have this, Vivian, a family of my own." "Neither did I," she admitted. "After Robert died, I thought my life would just be about surviving, protecting Eliza." She turned to face him, cupping his beloved face in her hands. "You gave us so much more than protection, Wade. You gave us a home, a future." "You gave me the same," he replied, his voice thick with emotion. "You and those beautiful children." As they sat there in the gathering darkness, the stars emerging like scattered diamonds across the Montana sky, Vivian reflected on the journey that had brought them here. From a desperate encounter on a dusty trail to this moment of profound contentment, every step, even the painful ones, had led them home. "I love you, Wade Daniels," she whispered, the words as fresh and true as the first time she'd spoken them. "And I love you," he answered, sealing the promise with a kiss as sweet as the day they wed. Today, tomorrow, and all the days to come. Inside the house, their children slept peacefully, safe in the knowledge they were deeply loved. Outside, the vast Montana wilderness stretched in all directions, beautiful and wild and free, much like the love that had brought this family together against all odds. And in the hearts of Wade and Vivian Daniels, there was only gratitude for the twist of fate that had allowed a desperate woman, a noble cowboy, and a precious baby girl to find their way to each other and forge a bond that would endure for all their days.